What's up, guys? We are working on Chemo's 2013 or 14 GT, and we got the rear end back from powder coating today. So we had Matt Lindsay brace it up, put a lower brace on this bad boy, and then welded some 9-inch ends on it, and it looks awesome now that we just got it back from powder coating. Looks factory as could be. Actually better than factory because it wasn't even powder coated factory. So obviously shout out to Matt at Wisconsin Race Cars, crushed it on the bracing project. And then JTS Powder Coating in Lakemore for hooking us up with like a 1-day turnaround to get this powder coated so we can get this thing back on the road. But anyway, we're about to hang it back in the car and put it back together, and we'll show you some of the goodies that are gonna be going in it here once we get the housing hung. The 8.8 is in the car, powder coated, fabricated, all that good stuff. This is the cross support, bottom brace that Matt Lindsay put on. Like we said earlier, it's got relocated lower control arms, so those brackets are on. And now we're starting to put the new seal. We're gonna start putting the diff back together. We're not changing the gear or the gear ratio, and it's the same housing, so we shouldn't really have to really set up too much aside from making sure everything is good once we get it together. So the first thing that I'm going to work on putting in is the crush sleeve delete. So in an 8.8 or 7.5 or really any rear end setup, you got some kind of crush sleeve this, which is like pretty thick steel. And as you tighten the pinion, this tightens and it sets the bearing preload. Well, the pinion is basically trying to screw itself into the carrier. And when that happens, these can get crushed, they can lose their strength over time. They could start to create play because they're getting constantly smashed with a sticky tire, stick shift, all sorts of stuff. So we just kind of make good habit of just throwing those in the garbage. What we replace it with, this is the first time using a strange one, is this little guy, which if you could tell in the camera, let me open the package. This one's from Strange Engineering. So we're gonna start doing more and more with them. They're local, they're in Morton Grove. This is a crush sleeve delete, which I can't open without a razor blade. There she goes. Hey baby, how you doing? Bam. Check that thing out. So it's essentially two machined halves. That's what we got going on here. Go together like so, like lamb and tuna fish. And then you shim it appropriately to get the thickness. Alright, so luckily when we're taking apart a rear end that was ready together good, or well, past spec at one point, we can take a mic what kind of preload it had, and then match it with this, and then your guess and check technique from then on is just adding or subtracting the supplied shims, which in this case are different thicknesses. So we're gonna get it close to this one, maybe a hair more, tighten it down, see what the bearing preload is, and go from there. Alright, so we got the pinion spacer on. That's what it looks like, instead of using that crush sleeve. I am getting ready to throw this in the car, zap it down with the impact, make sure the bearing preload feels right. Kind of adjust from there. That's pretty much it in this case. Then, you know, if the bearing has a lot of drag, on a used bearing, these are used. I'm putting the same ones that came out back in. No reason to really replace them. The rear end was rebuilt recently. But if it has a ton of drag, like over 20 inch-pounds to rotate the pinion, that's too tight. So we'll add another shim to the stack, and that'll loosen up the bearing pins. We are finally ready to drop the center section into the blue car. So we decided to go with the S-Track. It is 35 spline, which requires a kind of a custom Timken bearing, fit the axles in it. But it's an S-Drive, it's got 373 gear, 35 spline axles. So we're gonna get this thing loaded up in there, check the backlash, check the pattern, it should be ready to rock and roll. Hopefully this is an easy process. Sometimes they can prove to be a pain. So I've been cranking and trying to finish the blue GT this morning. We didn't really work on it much last night, so I have the girdle cover all cleaned up. I had this one sitting on the shelf, so I cleaned it up with some aluminum brightener, scrubbed it down really good. They get really nasty really fast anyway, but this one actually cleaned up really nice. So that's gonna go on there. I do have the rear end all set up. That's what we finished up last night. So everything is done here, everything's tight. Backlash is set. We checked the pattern. The pattern looks good. Springs are in. Panhard bar is waiting for the cover to go on. So right now I'm actually getting ready to slide the 35 spline strange axles into the housing. Make sure everything lines up. Get the bolts started on it before I put the cover on, just because I want to make sure that everything works well before I obviously seal up the main thing. So I'm gonna slide the axles in. I'll show you guys what it looks like. All right, so we pretty much got the Chemo's rear end all finished up, and it looks fantastic. Yeah, there's no way I could foresee anything going wrong with this rear end. I mean, it's simply the best of what you could do while still keeping a posi unit in it. It's got the strange 35 spline axles, 35 spline S-track, which is a full billet helical style torsion differential. Then you have obviously the 9-inch ends. I mean, it's just beef. It's all beefy. We have with the girdle on it. So this thing's ready for some serious abuse. But we're getting it all wrapped up. I'm gonna put it down on the ground. Make sure that the axle is centered in the car side to side, and you can adjust that with the panhard bar. So once I get that centered, then I can start tightening the last components, which are the panhard bar itself and the sway bar, which is only have bolts in it just to hold the sway bar from hanging down low. But otherwise she's set up. I just filled it with fluid. I just gotta put the fill plug in it, and she's ready to go. So I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like all finished up, although you won't really even be able to see anything different than what it is right now. And then we're gonna go test it. Well guys, it pains me to bring you an update on the blue car because I drove it and it ran awesome. Everything was good on it. Didn't see any issues. I even told the owner that we should schedule his pickup. And then I took a left turn and it went crunch. No idea what's going on with it, but it has so far resulted in tearing it completely apart again. So we have the axles out of it, which we inspected. There's no witness marks of any kind of binding or issue there. We've checked both sides. I talked to Andrew at Strange, and I just want to give him a shout out. Thank you so much for helping us on this one. And we started just kind of double checking everything. Obviously the housing gets fabricated to accept this axle package. So we wanted to make sure that the axle wasn't binding with the center of the diff. There's like a metal plate that's part of how it works in the middle. But we ended up having, can hardly see that, but that's about how much space we had side to side. So both axles were dead even, so we're good there, not an issue. The posi doesn't have any obvious issues from the outside looking in, and a couple other good notes to make were, so I probably put about 50 miles on this. So anyway, I pulled the drain plug on it, it's magnetic, and the metal wasn't terrible. It's a used gear set, so I wasn't expecting much from that, but it's got a little bit on the magnet. Is it great? No, it's not perfect, but it's also not terrible. There wasn't a huge chunk. I cleaned out the case, there wasn't anything in there. So I haven't found anything like super broken. So we just kind of double checked everything and everything looks good. So now we're gonna grab the diff, pull the ring gear off of it, and we're heading down to Strange to swap it out for another one, and they're gonna take this one apart while we're there. So hopefully we're there, we get to see it apart. So I'm gonna actually bring the camera with, maybe they show us that stuff, but we will continue this journey and hopefully get this car back together tonight.
I think it's ready to put on the bus.
Holy shit. I have one that looks like that for inch power. Oh yeah. Oh, that's pretty light actually. Expecting to... Yeah, that's pretty light. Channel, we are at ASSC Racing. Larry Stauner and John Galway have Chemo's 14 or 13 GT strapped down. We have HP tuners controlling it now, and we're about to make some test hits. So obviously we built the rear end on this car, and that was the main project, but getting the tune cleaned up from the last tuner is, we're kind of just starting from scratch and gonna go from there. So anyway, enjoy some dyno pulls.